This excerpt from Soto's own will, food plays a function in a religious ceremony representing the body and blood of Jesus Christ. But for the hundreds taking part in the entrada to La Florida in the 16th century with Soto, food was a compulsory part of the 4-year journey through what is today the southeastern part of the United States. A look at the 4 primary chronicles that exist of the 4-year journey reveals some of the substances that led to the survival of over 300 of the initial men. Ended up in New Spain in 1543. Food, just like violence in natives, comes and goes in the story. Since the beginning of the colonization of North America by the Spanish in the end of the 15th century, the ambitions of the crown and the colonists was both to keep themselves alive. Maintaining a food supply was central to the survival of these efforts. By the time Hernando de Soto arrives in west coast of Florida in 1539, lessons had been learned through his own travels and a half a century of Spanish influence in the Western Hemisphere. Through the Soto Chronicles, we can see that Soto's entrada was well prepared for a 4+ year journey through the interior of what is the present-day southeastern United States. What the entrada immerses themselves into is a native population that has gone through a agricultural transformation into a maize-centered agriculture, but accompanies that with substances like mulberries, beans, wild game, and fish. The diet staples of what Europeans had known was different from that of North America. According to Rebecca Earle, Europeans thus vacillated in their views about how much the new American environment they could incorporate into their own bodies and by extension into their culture. They were enthusiastic about many New World foods, but advised against prolonged or excessive consumption. The Spaniards chose to ignore the available sources that were available to them for culturally biased reasons. The knowledge acquired from Soto, his men, and other ventures into La Florida helped prepare them for a long-term mission. The exact number of those that took place on this venture is still being researched. What we do know is close to half of those that started in 1539 ended up surviving until the entrada landed in northern New Spain in 1543. This was not a miracle. This was a meticulously planned journey for Soto, the Spanish crown, and the men who risked great personal wealth to take part in this entrada. The men, as Garcilaso de la Vega points out, quote, filled their saddlebags with food they found in the pueblo. And although there was an abundance of raisins, dried plums, and other fruits and vegetables, they did not attempt to carry anything except Indian corn, because the first care that those Spanish took was to see that they would not lack maize for their horses, and it also furnished substance for the riders, unquote. This was meant to help keep alive the valuable horses the Spanish brought with them. These narratives change for those who later petitioned the crown because they were cold, naked, and hungry. The chronicles point out that the men going off in different directions looking for settlements and food sources. The entrada was split off between men on the journeys and others in the expedition. Paul Kelton's central argument about buffer zones between Indian settlements would prove to be a problem for the marching through the unsettled areas in this new world. This would not be different from taking a journey through unsettled parts of Castile. Several natives who were forced into translator roles, the hundreds of swine that were brought over, and the thousands of natives that were acting as carriers for their belongings, all aided in the survival of those in the entrada in the 4 years. As those like Galloway point out, the sources that we are working with are not 100% reliable, but neither was food sources at every point along the Soto's journey. But as we continue to search for more, we cannot in a pinch rely on the chronicles as Soto's men rely on swine. We must dig for more in our pursuit of what took place on this journey in 16th century La Florida.